Belvedere Farm is my wife Brydie, my son Harlan and me. We're on 320 acres of Waka Waka country in the South Burnett in Queensland. I come from a long line of farmers, but no farmer in my family has ever handed the family farm on to the next generation. So Brydie and I started from scratch about 10 years ago. We farmed near Mullaney for a long time, and as our farm business grew and we searched for a bigger landscape to grow food and feed our community from, we landed here in the South Burnett. I think the distinction between pasture-raised eggs like ours and the free-range eggs you see at Woolies is actually a really important one. When you think of a free-range egg, what you picture in your mind is the way that we raise our chickens. Out on pasture 24/7, moving around to fresh grass all the time, following our cow herd, interacting as part of an ecosystem. Unfortunately, free-range eggs in the shops are not like that. Free-range birds live primarily in a big shed. All of their food and all of their water is in that shed, and there is a tiny hole in the side of that shed to a sad dirt yard, and as long as they meet the space requirements, that's a free-range egg. And you know, our opinion is that that's just not good enough, and that's why we raise pasture-raised eggs. Our eggs are so completely different to any egg that you've had before, and our nitrate-free bacon is just incredible. I think of those two things, when you compare to meat and eggs you get in shops or restaurants, the bacon and the eggs are the biggest difference in flavour and in nutrient density. We're not certified organic here. We use no chemicals at all, except for in really serious animal health circumstances. But ultimately to us, organic certification is about a third party coming to our farm and saying, yes, this is good enough, or no, this is not good enough. Ultimately, the people who make that decision with the food we grow are the people who eat it. And that's why we're really open about sharing our story and our practices, so that people can decide for themselves whether they align with our values, with the way that we grow food, and that they're happy to eat it. Choosing not to use chemicals on the farm was a really deliberate decision for us. I grew up on a small holding on the Sunshine Coast, and I remember every weekend I would get in the car and head up there with a boot full of pesticides and herbicides and, you know, chainsaws and mowers, and we were just up there trying to tame nature, trying to fight nature and win. And we realised after 10 years that we absolutely couldn't do that, and that there had to be a better way. So when I started farming on my own, we decided to take a different path, which is to go out every day and not think, well, what have I got to kill today? But to go out and think, how can I bring life to this farm? And the way that we do that, and the way that we maintain animal health and get really good outcomes on the property, is by trying to closely mimic a healthy natural ecosystem. So that means things like having a flock of chickens following the cattle to scratch through their dung to reduce the amount of ticks and flies we've got. It means making sure that the cattle have always got access to a broad range of minerals that keep them healthy, improve their gut health and reduce parasites. It means moving the pigs regularly to fresh pasture, and indeed the cattle and the chickens to fresh pasture, because that means that it gives pasture plenty of time to recover. It means that we reduce the parasite burden, and ultimately it means that we can build diversity in the plant life and build soil health. We found during the pandemic and other disruptions recently that Coles and Woolies, who've been relied on to feed Australians for my whole lifetime, can no longer be relied on to feed us. These long supply chains where food is grown in a place like this and then shipped to a regional centre and then shipped to a city and then shipped to a distribution hub and then shipped back out to a Woolworths in our town is just not a system that we can rely on anymore. And that's why when people join our community supported agriculture collective, when people buy our produce, you shorten that supply chain as much as possible. I mean, we raise the animals, we take them ourselves to the butcher, We pick up the meat ourselves from the butcher and we take it straight to you. It's short of growing it yourself, it's about as short as a supply chain can get. Everyone who eats our food is participating in building a resilient food system. We're not relying on big concentrated sources of power in the food system. We're taking control of it ourselves and building our own networks, our own supply chains, and ultimately getting better outcomes. I think the biggest lesson we've learned as farmers is that we can't do this by ourselves. I mean, there is this image, this popular image of a farmer by themselves on the tractor out in the field getting the job done, but ultimately we absolutely rely on a really complex web of collaborators that actually allow us to grow food. Whether that's our mate who butchers for us, whether it's our colleague who farrows pigs for us, whether it's people who support us with advice and knowledge and practical help. And really our biggest support is the members of our community supported agriculture collective. So that's about 70 families who get a monthly pack of our produce, and they accept that not every pack's going to be the same. Some months the packs will be stuffed full. Some months, you know, if the weather has been poor, if we're having drought conditions, there might be no beef in their pack and things like that. And that support, where they fund us to produce it, is absolutely fundamental to us, because if we didn't have that steady income of our CSA collective, we would be growing food and not knowing whether it would be sold at a farmer's market at the end of the week. And that's too much risk to build a farm business on. So that CSA has been absolutely critical to our success. Well, look, the cost of food is a real concern. And, you know, we have a really strong position that factory farming is not the way forward in terms of feeding a population. And, you know, these are really tricky issues to unpack in capitalism, I guess. But really the thing that we always say about cheap food is, when you take the example of eggs, every dozen eggs costs $12. And that's what we charge for our eggs. When you buy our eggs and you pay the $12, you are paying the full cost of producing those eggs. You can go to Woolies and buy caged eggs for $6 a dozen, but the gap, the $6 you're not paying, someone else pays that. That might be the chickens paying it in, you know, living in cramped, horrific conditions and living short lives. It might be the people who look after those chickens who work in terrible conditions for low pay. It might be the communities around those factory farms who deal with noise and smell and water pollution. Ultimately, someone pays the full cost of food, but with cheap factory farmed food, it's not the end consumer. I mean, in terms of creating a world where everyone can eat good food, that's a much bigger question that requires some pretty drastic answers. But what I do know is that factory farming and producing more and more cheap food while externalising the cost of that cheap food is not the way forward.